All right, recording has started, and this is the August 10th, 2023 Crossplane community meeting. Right now, I will go to the chat and I will drop a link directly to the agenda document. So if you have any topics or you want to add yourself as an attendee here, then you are more than welcome to do so, and we'll get to everything on the agenda today. So let's start with recent releases. So I think on the day of the last community meeting, we released the 1.13 milestone. So that was on the day of the last community meeting. Since then, we've done 2 patches to it. So I did want to call those out because both of them had a common theme and a little bit of a lesson that we learned. So when we put out 1.13.0, we got a notice from folks that were trying to upgrade, that some of them are running into issues with the init container of the Crossplane pod not being able to get all of the CRDs installed and running, etc. And so we noticed that there's an issue with the composition revisions API, and removing an old version of it and being able to handle the migration or upgrade in place process there. So we learned a little bit of a lesson from that, and we got a fix out in 1.13.1 that will just automatically take care of that for you. So we have a pattern in place now that if a very old version of a CRD is removed, that we just upgrade it in place, and it's it's intended to be completely non-impactful to the cluster and keep Crossplane running. So we got that in place, and then after unblocking that, then we learned as well that the same thing was true for the old locks API. I think this one was much less of a scope of affected folks, but it was still important to go ahead and fix that one as well. With a pattern already in place with reusable code from 1.13.1, that was actually quite easy to do. And so, the special thanks to Stefan and Philippe and folks that were investigating into that and getting a fix out for that. But so that's where we have landed now. Is what 1.13.2 is the obviously the recommended version to be running from the 1.13 branch. So that is the latest, and that is the one that, especially if you are upgrading from previous versions of Crossplane, that you go ahead and just go straight to 1.13.2 as opposed to trying 1.13.0 or 1. There's a bit of additional functionality added in those patch releases as well, or fixes, that is, but the migration thing was by far the most important thing to call out, I believe. We also did a couple recent releases of the Crossplane runtime as well. I do not, off the top of my head, remember the importance of those. Oh, okay, yeah, there's essentially a single fix that was put into that that as Esky was driving. So those are available as well, both for the .20 and the .19 minor releases. So yes, for Crossplane and core and the runtime, those are all the recent releases we've had since the last community meeting. So then we can jump on into the current milestone that we are making progress on, and we're very early in the cycle, but we have started working on 1.14. So let's do a quick recap for everybody here on the roadmap that we have for 1.14. So I will follow up to go ahead and close out or remove from this view 1.13 because that's shipped, everything is done, that's all well and good. And so 1.14, we are starting on in earnest here and making a lot of progress early in the milestone here. So let me check to see who is on the call, because I did want a couple updates since we're getting kicked off in the milestone here, and we're actually making progress. So I see both that Hassan is on and Nick is on as well. So I wanted to check in with folks just to kind of get a bit of an update on, as we're starting the 1.14 milestone here. I want to get a bit of an update on the high level direction and what we're hoping to accomplish in this milestone for some of these important features here. So Nick, if you are available to kind of just give a quick overview of what we're going to accomplish or what we want to focus on for composition functions in 1.14, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, there was a design, greater context, I'm just getting back from vacation, so I've been out for a couple of weeks, but just before I left about 3 weeks ago, we merged a design for an iteration of composition functions So we expect to basically change the way it works a little bit, still kind of solve the same problems, broadly do the same thing, but it will change a bit in 1.14. So broadly, the major goal, the first major goal is to implement that. I won't go into details now, but basically functions will be long running. Most functions will run as pods. I'll add a link to the community agenda doc to that design for anyone who wants the actual details. So there's going to be a reasonable amount of work to get that built. Then on top of that, we also want to have at least one kind of generic composition function available. We think that's probably going to be a composition function that lets you use Go templating to specify, to configure composition in Crossplane. We also want to have one language SDK to build your own functions. That's probably going to be Go, just because Go is what we know, and it's the sort of the lightest lift to get done. But eventually, we'll have Python and TypeScript and all that kind of stuff as well. Off the top of my head, that's it.
All right, sweet. And then Nick, you and Philippe and Ezgi are kind of the team focusing on the composition functions in 1.14. Is that right?
I think so. I don't know exactly. I have seen Philippe and Ezgi work on it. I'm pretty sure John would be the authoritative one for that. I'm pretty sure that's right, though.
Cool. Awesome. And welcome back, by the way, as well. You were missed by everybody.
Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, and then Hassan, I wanted to check in with you as well, because I know you had started implementation on order deletion and usage tracking and stuff like that. So I definitely wanted to check in with you on where that is, any sort of blockers or what you expect in 1.14.
Yeah, sure. So basically, there is an open PR for that, which is ready for review. There were just like a couple of to-dos that I am like taking care of in parallel, but as I said, like the PR is ready for review, and I have been mostly working on the end-to-end testing, etc., which shouldn't block the review process. So far, there is no blocker. There was one issue that we couldn't find a perfect solution yet, which is the garbage collectors reaching to too long backoff times. We have been collaborating on that together with Bob. We just had the special interest group meeting just before this one, and we are trying to different approaches. We couldn't find a perfect solution yet, as I said, but we agreed that this shouldn't be a blocker on the feature itself. The feature, this will most probably be more like a UX problem for certain scenarios, especially when nested compositions are used and nested composites are used and combined with a foreground deletion policy. So far, there is no blocker. Once the PR is approved, reviewed and approved, we can get this feature in and hopefully make it available for testing. Actually, there is already a test image that I have included in the description of the PR. So for anyone interested in, they can just follow those steps there. And I would appreciate any feedback on how this solves the problem of deletion ordering.
Amazing, Hassan. And I definitely appreciate, I think this, maybe just to call this out, I think this is a really good example of a pull request that, kind of gives at a high level, what this pull request is all about, but then also gives an example of, what the user experience is or what the API types look like. And then also, information about how people can consume it and test it and get feedback as well. So all this extra information in here, I think makes this, adds the quality of this PR and then the accessibility of people to get engaged with it also.
Thanks.
And then Hassan, you can consider it. I'm not sure if it makes sense yet, but one idea is that for next community meeting, we could consider demoing this or showing it off and kind of doing a little section to dive into the experience as well, depending on where we are with it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. All right. then let's go back to the roadmap here. So promote observer-only resources to beta. With that one, I don't expect there is a lot of work to be doing here. We advanced the observer-only feature, with management policies, API, et cetera, in 1.13, with being able to have granular management policies and ignore changes and avoid or disable late initialization, stuff like that. So now that that is in place in the 1.13 milestone, we hope to bake this in 1.14 and not make drastic changes to it, not make breaking changes, not do anything like that. So hopefully this will bake in 1.14 and we will mature it to beta by the end of the release, or by the release time. And I don't, at this point, at least, I don't see any major obstacles with that. Cool. So that's the high level 1.14 roadmap features that we're working on. It's all, as I mentioned last time as well, we're going to be putting some investment into developer experience improvements, making it easier to build and run Crossplane. There's not, that's not going to be done in 1.14, and we're kind of still trying to figure out, what exactly to focus on and deliver in the 1.14 timeframe. So if anybody is interested in that, feel free to reach out to me and we can have a little chat and kind of figure out, we want to listen to people's feedback and what they want to see and stuff like that. So we can at least start early conversations together. With that, I'm happy to chat with anybody on that one. Cool. So I don't know if this, if this is up to date, but let's take a look. Yeah, I think we're probably going to have to clean up the 1.14 milestone a bit and get things accurately tracked. But let me see if there's anything that we wanted to call out or explore here. And also, while I'm doing that, the floor is open if anybody wanted to check in on anything that's on their mind for 1.14. Oh, one thing I had is that Hassan, maybe this might be for you, buddy, since you responded on the issue. But I was wondering if there was, I added this issue here into the 1.14 project board, just because we don't know the scope of it yet, and it could be concerning. So I think where we are is that we don't necessarily understand why this is. But do you have any insight on maybe where to take this next, Hassan, or anything to investigate further right now?
Yeah, to be honest, I missed the response here, so I need to check before I can make a comment. But I will add
fair.
it to my to-do list. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, just a heads up then that I did add that. Yeah, I added it to the 1.14 board because we haven't had widespread reports of this, but the behavior as described is concerning enough to at least try to get the scope and try to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Then, yeah, anything else that folks want to bring up for 1.14, or shall we move on to the next section? All right, well, let's hop on into provider releases then as well. So I gathered all of at least things that were posted to the announcements channel in the Slack workspace. I gathered all of those here for this list here. Since the last community meeting, there's been a number of provider releases. The community AWS provider got a 0.42, and we've got links to the release notes right there, so you can read all about that. OpenStack, the provider OpenStack is, the CI is set up for that. It's been donated to the Crossplane Contrib organization, but there is one issue still remaining with getting it published publicly. With I think the tags got a little bit confused with the release branches and the release tags and everything like that. So we need to clean that up, and then that should be publishing and available publicly soon. And then there's a suite of Upbound official provider releases as well that are all linked here to the release notes and everything like that as well. On providers, Jean or Alper, anybody that may be here focusing on providers, we obviously have a direct agenda topic later on about some of the community providers, but anything else in terms of provider releases or provider progress that you all would like to share?
Yeah, so the main kind of like feature that landed in the latest providers was the granular management policies. That's part of the observe only feature, and it's now available in all of the providers. And along with the usual kind of like enhancements, new resources, and bug fixes. We were hoping to be able to release, do a patch release on these providers this week with some performance gains we picked up in some testing scenarios, but unfortunately, we've also detected a memory regression on the Terraform side on the latest Terraform binary, and so we're still investigating why that is and trying to see if we can find a solution for that. So don't hold me to it, but hopefully in the next week or two, we can do another release with further enhancements on some of the optimizations we've been able to identify so far.
Fantastic. Yeah, thanks for that more thorough update, John. I appreciate that, that further context. Okay. So if folks have other providers that they are using or have published new releases or anything like that, feel free to add those to the agenda document here. We'll get that into this list as well. So yeah, moving on to the community topics section. So, typically we have this section here for content within the ecosystem, blog posts, videos, etc. about Crossplane. I've been collecting those in the backlog throughout the last 2 weeks since the last community meeting, and I forgot to decorate them with little descriptions and stuff. So they're just raw URLs right now. So it's not super helpful to everybody. But one thing I did want to call out specifically, and if Pete is on the call, I'd love to have you talk through it, but I don't see Pete, so that might not be the case. But I did want to make specific mention of the docs improvements that we had done recently. So those did kind of get included into the 1.13 timeline, but we also have this blog post about it as well that kind of goes into some of the details, etc. So I wanted to just call out that we made a big investment into deeper content and more useful content and the organization of that content, etc. on the main docs site. So Pete spent a lot of cycles on this in 1.13 and added 6,000 new lines of content. So things that had not been previously covered that folks asked about a lot are now included in the docs. So this is the start of more to come. Pete, is working, it's full time on Crossplane docs. It's and focusing on that. So there'll be more to come here, and happy to hear from folks more about what they want to see in the docs, what's missing from being documented, and all that sort of stuff. But I really am impressed with this investment that and this progress that Pete made in 1.13, and really happy to see it. And Pete's, it should also be noted that Pete's meme game is on point as well.
Eric, Pete is on the call.
Pete is on the call. What?
I joined like 2 minutes ago.
Ah, you sneaky guy. All right. Well, then you just listened to me ramble about your work. Anything that you would love to add in addition to that, Pete?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Like you said, we're really trying to focus on making things a little bit more clear, a little bit more digestible. I like to call this project, the breaking up of our docs monolith into, docs microservices as we break up those components. The next big thing, not as big, but the next big thing is working on kind of fleshing out some of the provider authentication methods. That's another thing we've heard a lot of people struggle with. What are the various options and how do they work, and give me some working examples. But if there's anything else y'all are hearing or struggling with on a regular basis that you think we need to add in, I'm all ears.
And one great format to do that is opening issues on the Crossplane/docs repo. That's where the backlog is. That's where everything's captured. You can also throw suggestions on the documentation channel in Crossplane Slack. Yeah, we're definitely listening to those and incorporating as much as we can to keep moving the ball forward here. All right. And yeah, so people can dive into some of these other links and news articles and stuff about Crossplane in the last couple of weeks. Cool. So I wanted to make a mention here that the Community Day event that we are putting on, I think it's September 19th, if memory serves me correctly. The call for proposals closed at the end of last week. So it is now closed, and I wanted to give a thank you to everybody who submitted things. We got a lot of quite high quality content there, and there are limited slots, so it's a challenge to figure out the final schedule here, because there is such good topics there. So I just wanted to give an update that the program selection committee has reviewed essentially everything, and then we are meeting to finalize all our decisions together. And we expect to be announcing the schedule. We'll be notifying the accepted proposals pretty soon, but then we expect to announce the schedule publicly probably by the end of next week. So a week from tomorrow is what we'd probably expect there. And thanks again for everybody submitting, because I know a number of you on this call submitted talks, and they were all very good. Another note here to make is that we did have a community survey for folks to provide feedback on, what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see, what's, everything there to kind of influence where we're going with Crossplane. There is a direct link here to the Google form that has all that information. A lot of the questions are optional. So, if you just want to provide a little bit of feedback and don't want to get bogged down in a lengthy survey, which it's not that lengthy to begin with, but you can skip a lot of questions if you want to as well. Then we still appreciate any feedback you do have. And so this closes at the end of this week. So tomorrow will be the last day for this survey here. And thanks to everybody who has already provided their feedback. But yeah, one more day to get a response in if you are able to do so, and we do appreciate it. All right. Next topic here, I believe this came from Stefan, who, I don't know, I guess I'm not very good at looking at the participants list, so maybe is on the call, maybe is not, but I don't see him directly here. And I think he might actually be on PTO anyways. But anywho, so Stefan, Dr. Stefan here, a wonderful person, started a thread that he wanted to get a little bit of feedback from people. And so he had been looking at metrics and observability, et cetera, especially in production scenarios. And so he was kind of posting for folks, kind of crowdsourcing a little bit, that if there was one metric that that you could add, or you would want to add to Crossplane to be able to observe it better in production, then there's a thread to add those to. I don't know if it's gotten much traction yet, so any responses there would be quite useful as Stefan is thinking through some of more things about monitoring and observability, et cetera, for Crossplane. So that could only help the entire community at large with any ideas that y'all folks might have. So there's a direct link to that thread here in the agenda doc. So feel free to click through and go on over there and contribute to that thread. Okay, and then the last topic here, more the main event of the discussion today, I wanted to turn the floor over to Jean, since you've been kind of running or kind of messaging there. Yeah, John, if you want to get kicked off in the discussion here about maintainership of community providers.
Yeah, so the removal, let's say the formal removal of the outbound engineers as maintainers is mostly actually just a more accurate reflection of what has been happening over the last few months. We, since we released Outbound's official providers for AWS, Azure, and GCP, all of our energy has been going into that initially to get resource coverage, and now we're very much focused on performance and improving the efficiency. And so we're not able to really dedicate any of our time to maintaining these community providers. And from time to time, engineers would get pinged about people, asking, can you merge as PR or so on. And it's not as trivial as just clicking a button to merge it. If you've got to take the responsibility to think through it, make sure that it's doing the right things, and is it actually adding value? And so it became and it's also not something that's easy for engineers to feel like they have an expectation because their name is publicly listed as a maintainer, but the reality is they're tied up with other work and expectations. And so we've made the decision to just basically more accurately reflect the reality of that we can't actually commit time to these providers because of our own providers that we're focusing on. I guess the main call to action here is really also about specifically provider Azure and provider GCP. Now that the outbound engineers aren't on there as maintainers, it does look like there's potentially a lack of active maintainers there. One of the maintainers left is Dan, who recently moved to an emeritus maintainer of Crossplane. As he's kind of like focusing his career now in the hardware space. And I believe the other maintainers on there haven't been active in a while. And so the call is really that if there are community members who are using these providers, rely on them, and are willing to kind of like commit the time and effort to become maintainers, that they basically step up and indicates as such. The last thing we want is for repositories of providers to be there that basically become stale, and people might go and use them, but then later on you'll see these issues pop up like, is this dead? As you often see in these open source projects when maintainers kind of like move on. And so the hope is that there's some folks in the community that will step up over the next week or two. Otherwise, we might need to make a recommendation to the steering committee to consider whether we need to archive or more formally indicate that those providers aren't being maintained currently. I believe the situation is slightly different for provider AWS. We do have 2 maintainers on there that are active, and I believe have at least given an indication that they're willing to stay on and look at bug fixes and PRs coming in. But I guess the request is exactly the same. Like, are there some people in the community who are willing to step up and help out on these providers? I also I realized like some folks kept asking what's the difference even between outbound and community providers, and that's been a common question that's come up a lot. I've tried to give like as unbiased an opinion as I could in Slack there, just to give a little bit of a summary of the outbound providers, I believe Jared is kind of like considering also whether we should be doing a blog post about the various providers and that's available to community. But this has become a point of confusion, especially for folks who are new to the community, and we might want to make sure that we just kind of like help drive the communication better there.
Yeah, John, that was very.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I was wondering if I could interject something on this topic, if that's okay.
Yeah, please do, Dan. Okay.
Yeah. So at least from my team at SAP, I can say that there definitely has been, and I think continues to be, confusion about the particularly the licensing differences or lack thereof between community and official. In fact, I think in the last 3 days, I've had to explain it to the same set of people twice after I got whatever information, from you guys in Slack. And it just somehow wasn't sticking. It's like, no, look, same licensing. So, yeah, anything that could, make that really clear would be great. I'd love it if I could point to a doc or something or blog post that says, hey, look, same license. My team has been using, there are other teams using Crossplane or starting to use Crossplane within SAP. I'm not really plugged into them, but from my team, I can say we've been using it for 2+ years, and we certainly are using all three of these providers. And we're not going to switch away from Crossplane, that's for sure. So we need to figure out what's the way forward for us. Do we become maintainers, or do we just become maintainers and stick with community contrib providers, or do we not become maintainers and work as much as we can to switch to the official providers, or do we do some sort of mix where, well, we sign up for being maintainers for 6 months, whatever, while we sort out the transition to official. So we're trying to figure that out, what we're doing. And one of the things we need in order to figure that out is some sort of understanding of what would be involved in transitioning to the official providers. Thus far, I think just all that's happened is some months ago, one of our developers briefly looked at the official providers and just noticed, oh, you know what, hey, like the property names aren't the same on the objects we're using, like Elasticache. So we have to do something. It's not just a simple, hey, change the provider we're referencing, and that's the end of it. There's more work to be done here. So, and unfortunately, that guy who's one of our most hands-on, folks with Crossplane stuff, he's on vacation for a bit. But so where we are is, like I said, we're trying to sort out what to do, and there's a data point at the moment that we're missing, and if anything that Crossplane could do to help us fill in that data point would be great. Like, okay, whether it's just something anecdotal, like, hey, someone did migration and it looked like this, or whatever, anything on that front would be appreciated.
Yeah, and Dan, there's I'm going to drop a link here just so that it's accessible. Is that there is documentation on what the migration process looks like and the availability of tooling and all that sort of stuff. So making that accessible and seeing that is at least the first step. I think Jean was probably going to make another comment, maybe a little bit deeper, but at least that's the first step here that I'll drop right now into the agenda doc.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, just on the migration, it is not just a drop in to switch to the official providers. There are API changes, and we have some guides around how to manually migrate, and like the effort related to that will obviously quite vary based on how complex your and extensive your usage of the resources are. And then we're currently working on a migration tool that will not make the process totally seamless and painless, but will help a lot. So for instance, there will be a migration tool kind of like template, and there will be shared converters that will basically could take care of most of your managed resource conversion to the official providers. And then there's a framework that allows you to write your own custom converters for some of your compositions and so on. And so Upbound's team is currently using this tooling to help some of our customers migrate over, and we're learning a lot from the feedback and so on. The tooling will probably become publicly available towards kind of like the end of August, when we've ironed out quite a lot of issues, and we'll keep updating that migration page with the latest information and available tooling.
Great, thanks so much. So probably what will happen on my team side is I will take this to my manager, and then we'll figure out what's, like I said, what's our way forward. Like, should we sign up as maintainers, or focus our energy on migration? Like, obviously we wouldn't want to jump on as maintainers and then like 2 weeks later say, oh no, sorry, we didn't mean it. If we're going to commit, we want to be sure that we're going to be committing for many months at least, before pulling out, if we do pull out. So yeah, we'll on our side, we'll have a chat and sort out whether we're signing up for me as maintainers, and if so, for how long.
Yeah, and Dan, one thing to think about too there is that you don't have to make that decision in isolation. If you want to chat or get some ideas or brainstorm or whatever, like we can share some time together and kind of talk through some things, if that helps too, man.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks so much. And also, a thing we are just like in the last couple of months, because there are now some other groups in SAP picking up Crossplane, and they've become aware of us and we've become aware of them. We have been trying to coordinate with them. Like, for example, we're all interested in in SAP, we're all interested in Alibaba support, for example. So we've been powwowing about, okay, do we go with the community contrib existing one, or the generated, upbound tool generated thing? Like, what are we going to do here? We're trying to sync up, on this. So if we can, we will also, the stars line, because most of them are in EU and we're in North America. So sometimes chatting with them is, the timing doesn't work. But anyway, we'll want to be at least trying to sync up with them on this topic as well. So
we are here.
Yeah. Oh, hey! Didn't see you in the list. So exactly this. Hey, Max.
The stars have aligned. That's awesome. And then something else here. So Carl is also on the call here, and is one of the current maintainers of the community provider AWS. So Carl, if you had more to share for your opinion or your thoughts or anything, then you're more than welcome to. But it's not a requirement.
Yep, I think you've all summarized it very well, and we're kind of in the same situation as Dan, except for it's more like we're too busy to migrate at this time, and we also look forward to any tooling to help migrating, but we'll stay on as maintainers, at least for as long as we use it. When we're not using it, then of course that's a much more difficult task to maintain something that you don't use. So, yeah. But bug fixes and such we'll work on.
Just want to mention something that came up in a chat with Carl, between Carl and I yesterday, the day before, was, I think Carl mentioned the topic of things being in production. So we have some stuff in production that we wouldn't want to lose in the process of transitioning. So that's one area of concern. I think it sounds like there's multiple consumers of providers today that that's a concern. Like, how can we migrate from community to official, leaving things in place?
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Dan. And that's what we've been doing with some of our outbound customers that we've gone through the migration process with, and keep things running, and the tooling that we're developing and the guides that we have and all that sort of stuff. So that's absolutely a focus of and a goal of the migration effort that we've had as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking also maybe the new observe only resources would allow you to do a dry run migration and check if what are there any differences in do the new provider want to make any changes, or is it happy? So if you create all the managed resources for the new provider, the official provider, but with observe on the mode that would give confidence that we're not going to lose any data, I think. So if that's possible, that would be very cool.
Yep, that definitely makes sense to me as well. Cool. But yeah, so definitely appreciate folks weighing in on this. And Sean, thank you for, you know, kind of driving and you know, driving the process here, being thoughtful about the messaging and you know, kind of communicating with the rest of the community, et cetera. So that's definitely appreciated as well. And then, you know, as I mentioned to Dan as well, right? Like that, you know, I'm always happy to chat with folks if, you know, you have questions or, you know, want to bounce ideas, et cetera. So, you know, we can find time to talk and try to navigate things, I'd say. But yes, and then if folks are interested in becoming a maintainer, a provider of any of these providers, do feel free to reach out and we can figure that out and you know, work with the current maintainer teams and all that sort of stuff to get the right things in place. Cool. So I believe that was the last agenda item formally on the doc. Do folks have more thoughts or more topics that they wanted to add here that did not make it to the doc?
Isn't it on the doc? There's something I just posted to the chat, and I mean, if we don't discuss it here, that's totally fine. It's just something I would like to get people thinking a little bit about. Is after this you know, recent problem with the upgrading with the lock storage type, which by the way, we've had my team has had like 3 upgrade problems kind of like this in the last year and a bit. There was another one, nothing related to the Crossplane, where it was particularly nasty. We actually had to tear down a couple of landscapes or you know, clusters as a result. So we're looking at, you know, ways that we can somehow, you know, do some sort of upgrade validation and or mitigation of this kind of problem. So I posted in the chat something about this, or just a link to this. What is it here? Whatever, cube storage version migrator. So that's something we're just starting to consider, but obviously we can't, you know, adopt it if it's going to interfere with the Crossplane init process. So it'd be great if some Crossplane folks could just take a quick, you know, look at it and maybe let us know, you know, if it would be safe for us to even consider, or if it's like, no, don't do that. It'll totally screw whatever Crossplane's doing. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Dan, because I know that had come up when as something to investigate when we were looking for an initial solution to you know, migrating the CRDs and their versions, et cetera, before we got the patch releases out. So I didn't look into it too thoroughly myself, though. But I'm also super curious to if there's any interaction there or, you know, thing that we want to be aware of. I think another, so I could ping, maybe Stefan probably already has an opinion on this, like in his sleep, I would bet. So maybe I could ping him and see if he's got an idea on it as well. But then the other thing to note as well here is that, let's see if I can drop a link to it here. So we also recently added a new epic on the roadmap that is focusing on reliable, safe installs, upgrades, et cetera. So that's something, you know, kind of a theme here, an epic that would be kind of in the same vein here of, you know, making sure that all those processes and rollbacks, et cetera, are, you know, invested in and you know, obstacles are removed and things like that. So that's something that could also be of help here as well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Just
I can add something. So we when we fix this problem for the releases recently, we checked first the Cube storage version migrator, and we implemented in Crossplane a CID migrator based on what the guys are doing in the Cube storage version migrator. If you want, you can run it before the init processes from Crossplane. There's no interference in it. It will only check if the storage version can be migrated. If there is not old version, set it in, then nothing will happen in the init process from Crossplane. We did this with Stefan together.
Were you saying so you can run this before you?
Yeah, you can.
Like
You can
on the
run
old version.
Yeah, you can run this before. It's not a problem because we're checking only if their old version is set it in the etcd. And if yes, we doing the migration. If other processes doing the migration before, it's also fine.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, Christopher. Thanks for confirming that, man. Feel free to come off mute anytime and provide useful explanations to things.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome, dude. Okay, so yeah, thanks for Dan bringing that up, and I missed that in the chat there as well. So just doing a quick scan, and I don't see other big questions that came up or anything. But yeah, a couple new folks though that joined the call here and they're new to the community as well. So Santosh and Jared too, let's call him, joined on here, and definitely happy to see you all today, and looking forward to any involvement and engagement that you all want to get into with the project too, man.
Thanks, Jared. Nice to meet you.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, then if that is everything for the agenda, then I think we can go ahead and adjourn for the week and give everyone 10 minutes back here. All right. Good to see everybody. Thanks for the great discussion and thoughtfulness here. I really appreciate everybody in the community.
Thanks so
Take
much.
care, everybody.
Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.